Dan?
Okay, thanks. Good morning, everybody. So thanks for joining us for our pop-up Member Connect. Today we have Clarke Wise. He is the Mississippi REALTORS Government Affairs Director. And so he is our heartbeat down at the Capitol to interact with all of the legislators and to keep a watch on any bills or anything that could come up to either harm or help us. And so we are going to go ahead and record this session today. So if you know somebody who was planning to be here and could not, we will have it up on our YouTube channel, hopefully by tomorrow. But anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Clarke so he can do his presentation. And Clarke, you should be able to share your screen and everything. You should be good.
Yeah, let's see here. All right, good deal. Is everybody able to see that one? Can you see it, Amanda? Yeah, okay, good deal. Well, good morning, y'all, and thanks for including me on and allowing me this opportunity to kind of walk through Initiative 65 and the Realtors' involvement and consideration of this constitutional ballot measure that's we'll all see next week. Just kind of to go through the process of how we got here. In order to change the Mississippi Constitution, you has to go through the people. And that can happen in two ways. It means that the legislature can vote with a 2/3 majority to place something on the ballot, which is the case with the flag this year, and then also the alternative 65A. And the other way it can happen is through a signature petition. And that's how Initiative 65 reached the ballot. And so what happens is a group sponsors a petition. It's approved. The language is approved by the Secretary of State's office, Attorney General, and they go around the state and they collect a percentage of, I think it's 20% from the old 5 congressional districts. They have to have that representation from each of the congressional districts in order for ballot initiatives to reach the ballot. And there was a group called Mississippians for Compassionate Care that launched this, and it's a group that it's actually started by my representative here in Madison, and he's put about nearly $2 million in this initiative in terms of getting the volunteer support. They have paid full-time staffers, communications directors, things like that. They traveled around the state, mostly approaching I asked my mother about this because she was approached in Tupelo. They approach people at football games, public places, Walmart, and they'll say, "Hey, do you believe that folks with debilitating medical conditions should have access to medical marijuana?" And if you say yes, then you sign, and your signature goes in and before the Secretary of State's office. Well, they were able to collect enough signatures to do that, and it was placed on the ballot. And I'll go through the details of kind of what's in 65 in a minute. As a response to that, this year, the Mississippi legislature they passed Alternative Measure 65A, and they did that through House Concurrent Resolution number 39. And what that does is it places an alternative measure on the ballot. And I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to show you what the ballot looks like here. So when you walk into your voting booth, this is what Mississippi voters will see on the right part of your screen there, that statewide ballot measure 1. And so you'll see on there, it gives a description of Initiative 65, a very brief one. Should Mississippi allow qualified patients with debilitating medical conditions as certified by Mississippi licensed physicians to use medical marijuana? And then per the Secretary of State's office, a fiscal analysis is conducted about this constitutional amendment. What are the costs going to be? What are the benefits going to be? And you'll see here, this is what the Legislative Budget Office, what they can infer from what 65 is saying. And there are a couple things I point out here. You'll see there in the last sentence, it says, and a sales fee at 7%. That is not the same thing as a sales tax. That is per 65. It allows the Department of Health, who is the regulatory agency, it allows them to assess a fee up to the sales tax rate of 7%. And as you'll see in this following program, it explicitly stated in 65 that all of the revenue that is generated from the sale, the processing, everything dealing with marijuana has to be used to support the state program. So it's actually in the language of Initiative 65 that the money goes back into the Department of Health and can only be used for the administration and management of the program. Then you'll see Alternative Measure 65. Alternative Measure 65A, shall Mississippi establish a program to allow the medical use of marijuana products by qualified persons with debilitating medical conditions. All right, so when 65A was passed, or what's in this House concurrent resolution, it basically puts in our Constitution, it amends the Constitution as well and says there shall be established a marijuana program in the state of Mississippi. There's nothing more clear in legislative language than the word shall. When something is a possibility, the word may is used. Shall is an absolute term used for it. So it establishes this. What it does not do, it does not prescribe all of the elements that would be within that program. And that's done on purpose so that the legislature would be able to go back and provide tweaks, as we do with almost any other law that we have. That's why there's not another product that exists in the Constitution. That's one of the reasons. And so I want to go through today what is in 65. Y'all have probably seen some of the mailers that have come out on behalf of the association, and I want to tell y'all, why the association took the position. I want to explain the position of the association and hopefully answer any questions that anybody on this call may have. So when going through the language of this proposed constitutional amendment, you'll see it's on our website under Mississippi Realtors /Initiative 65. We have, as I pointed out over here, a toolkit that we can use to educate yourself and your members about what's in Initiative 65. This 5-page document here is what will go in the Constitution. Y'all don't see this when you go into the ballot. Most groups aren't really talking about it, especially the proponents of 65. But there are two areas that I would call your attention to for the sake of the realtors. Number one is dealing with the taxation of it. So in Section 6 of the bill, the constitutional language, this is the section of the constitutional amendment that deals with the money component of it. And so the realtors have had a long-standing position concerning building better communities. We have a list of, and you can find this on our website too, standing advocacy positions. And these are the points that we look to as a Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. These are the points that we examine before we take a position on any policy that is related to the realtor community. And in this case, we have a standing advocacy position that deals with livable communities. It's what we cited when we supported the expansion of rural broadband. It's also what the Mississippi Realtors used years ago when looking to address infrastructure needs and funding. And just to paraphrase that, we say to promote livable communities, government should encourage quality growth by sufficiently funding transportation and infrastructure, including roads, water, sewer, etc., to provide the framework for a community's quality of life and lay the essential groundwork for accommodating quality commercial, industrial, and residential growth. So Section 6 of this Initiative 65 language is in direct conflict with that. And what I would point to is there are a couple things in here. If you read Section 6 here, you can see that it states that they can assess a fee up to the equivalent of the sales tax rate. But again, it's not a sales tax. The legislature levies tax. It says revenue generated from this shall pay for the costs incurred by the department in implementing and enforcing the provisions of this article and shall be deposited into a special fund in the state treasury. That means that all the money that goes into this, it doesn't go into any kind of a special fund for roads, bridges, schools, classrooms, things like that. And it says fund balances shall not revert to the general fund. So it is going to be in our Constitution that even if this money, even if we collect $1 billion from the sale of medical marijuana, not a dime of it can be used for anything other than the promotion and implementation of the program. And lastly, I'll say in here, this is a lot of people don't know about this. The last part of this section here, the whole program starts out, a lot of the proponents of 65 state that it's self-funded, that there's no taxpayer. Well, the whole program starts with a $2.5 million loan from our rainy day fund. That's the fund. Excuse me. That's the fund that we have in our state to address things when we have, PPE shortages or, dealing with pandemic, hurricane needs, budget shortfall, things like that. So that's where that caught our attention too. But more importantly, what I would point to y'all and say this is really the meat of the realtor's concern of it are these two sections here in section 8 of the bill, subsection 4 and subsection 5. And we have in our standing advocacy positions, we have a point and it explicitly deals with zoning. And we have the realtor position is the Mississippi Association of Realtors oppose any legislation that would limit the authority of counties and municipalities to zone as they see fit. So if you read section 4 and section 5 of this constitutional amendment, it is explicitly stated that these, what they're called treatment centers, cannot be treated any differently than pharmacies or any other like commercial or industrial business in terms of zoning. It also says that their only buffer is 500 feet. So even our liquor stores across the state, there's a provision in the state law that allows for a city or county to treat them differently than the minimum. For example, I think the statute states that they're 400 feet, but in Madison, for example, where I live, the buffer is 1,500 feet from schools, churches, child care facilities. So I guess what I would say is when y'all have probably seen the mailers that have gone out on behalf of the association, those are the concerns from the association. It has nothing to do with the legalization of marijuana. It has everything to do with the terms that are contained in the language of Initiative 65. And I would imagine some of y'all, if you've been confronted either in social media or even in discussions, I would imagine a lot of folks are asking, why do the realtors have a concern with marijuana? And the short answer is, it's not a concern with marijuana. It's a concern with the terms that are going in the Constitution. If this was any other product, I would imagine the association would take the same position. If it were mobile homes that wouldn't allow, for cities and counties to zone as they see fit, that's the concern with the language in 65. And so, part of the reason the association reached this position, I want to kind of answer a couple questions. Number one is I've heard from some people seen on social media that say, well, we weren't polled on this. That's inaccurate. Every year we submit our statewide legislative priority survey to members with email addresses. I know some people just delete those, but we have quite a few people that answer it. And this question was actually on our legislative priorities list, our survey that we sent out in August. And what our members were telling us based on that survey was they may have a favorable opinion of the legalization of medical marijuana, but we specifically asked, when you look at the language of 65, does it go too far? And a strong majority of our membership said yes, that is against the position that realtors have as property professionals and community champions. I will tell you, we also did a general poll statewide of Mississippians, and the number one concern that came with Initiative 65 was the lack of a city or county's ability to decide what their community looks like. That was the highest polling thing that raised major concerns among Mississippi voters. So the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee examined this language, looked at the polling from our own membership, looked at the statewide information, and adopted the position to oppose Initiative 65. And that motion went to the Issues Mobilization Committee, and the Issues Mobilization Committee not only agreed with it, but they wanted to do an issues mobilization campaign in order to activate citizens across Mississippi to educate and educate them on the language contained in Initiative 65, and hopefully get them to oppose this harmful language. Because once this goes into our Constitution, it is extremely difficult to change that. Case in point, we've got 3 ballot measures on there. One of those deals with, a Jim Crow era law that was passed dealing with what some people call it an electoral college. And we're just now getting that on the ballot to change, to remove this hindrance for people to win statewide office. So I think that's kind of, Amanda, that's a general overview of kind of what's contained in 65. I guess I'd be happy to, I can briefly talk about 65A. We don't have the association. I will tell you when we have our picture of the sample ballot here. Sorry, I'm trying to, well, here, I'll just go. A ballot initiative can pass, it only can pass one way. So when you get into your voting booth, you answer 2 questions. And I know this is very confusing. The first question you're asked is you get to vote for approval of either or against both. And so essentially this says, do you want marijuana in the Constitution? You vote for or against. Now, regardless of how you fill out this top portion, you still get to answer the bottom. And I would encourage you to answer the bottom for this reason. This top portion of the ballot is a simple majority. So let's say 1 million people cast a ballot in November. It doesn't matter if 10 people answer this question, if 6 of them say, yeah, I'm for it. Then we go to this question, all right? Once you hit a simple majority on here, 40% of the total voters have to cast a ballot in this one. So if 1 million people cast a ballot in the election cycle, 400,000 Mississippi voters have to select one or the other of these. And at that point, the majority, whichever one has a majority, is the winner. But if the total number of voters does not reach 40%, the ballot is tossed out. That's kind of a simple overview of it. Now, in terms of 65A, I'll just mention a few things. Number one, it is a constitutional amendment. It also amends the Constitution. The primary thing I hear, and it is a myth, is that it's only for terminally ill people. That is inaccurate. The only mention of terminal illness is in Section H, where it says the smoking of marijuana products shall be restricted to the treatment of qualified persons who have terminal medical conditions. It does not establish who is going to regulate the program. I will tell you, I was talking to Dr. Dobbs the other day, and he said, under 65, the program has to be enacted, rules have to be adopted in July, and the program has to launch in August. And he says, we are nowhere near able or ready to do that at this time. And I think that's part of why the legislature did not set the specific time frame in there. What I will tell y'all is because it contains that language shall in 65A, if for any reason in a reasonable amount of time the legislature failed to act, there is grounds for a lawsuit from Mississippi citizens if there is not a program enacted. In fact, Ways and Means Chairman Trey Lamar was on the radio this morning and he said that exact same thing. Amanda, that's kind of a general overview of what kind of the Mississippi Realtors position is. I will tell you, if you look at kind of this one pager, what we tell our folks is our position's not on marijuana. It's on the language contained in Initiative 65, harmful language. And so we tell our members the best way to defeat it is to fill out the ballot in this manner. But even if you're for a program, fill out 65A. You can still fill out that for bubble and then vote for 65A. Because at least then we have a chance to petition our legislature and address these concerns that exist in 65. we have a chance to make sure that those concerns are addressed moving forward, and they'll be in state statute rather than the Constitution. I tell people, can you imagine if we wanted to deal with our license law and we put that in the Constitution? It would be very challenging to make those changes, and so those are the general concerns from the Mississippi Association.
So Clarke, am I understanding right that 65A basically reads the same as 65, but it just gives more wiggle room if there needs to be changes, if there are concerns down the road, anything like that? I mean, they would still legalize the medical marijuana. It just gives more flexibility. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's on purpose. I've seen a lot of the literature, like especially on those comparison charts where you'll see 65 and 65A, and they'll say there's no start date, there's no zoning, that's done on purpose, and it's specifically because they want to hear from groups like the realtors, and they want to hear from the bankers about how to deal with it, because there are all these other concerns that address with it that extend beyond just our concerns. From a federal standpoint, individuals, and this does fall in a realtor's wheelhouse. So if the Bank Secrecy Act prevents individual banks from taking money from any marijuana related business. So if you, as a licensed realtor, were dealing in a commercial strip mall and you wanted to, let's say, rent out something to one of these treatment centers, they may not provide the loan for those individuals, because then it is technically money laundering, because they're not able to tell if the money came from the illegal source or a legal source. And so, yeah, that's the reason why. And that's not unusual. In fact, it is unusual to put all of these parameters in the Constitution. Think about our tax code. It doesn't say in there exactly how it works. It just says there shall be an income tax, things like that. That's done on purpose because it can be tweaked when necessary.
So you said that a group out of, was it Madison, started this, and why do you think they were so pushed to be so strict with everything? And I'm sure everybody else has seen their promotions. I know I've gotten at least 2 flyers sent to my house, and I saw a commercial when I was in Jackson last week where, they basically say, do a pity card of, how dare you not allow these people in pain what they need. And then the other flip side is, but don't let legislators control it. So, I mean, their message is really strong and very shady compared to what the actual bill says. Yeah.
The lead, I guess I'll call it sponsor on it is Representative Joel Baumgar, which I get a laugh. Like I said, he is my representative. When they say it's, physicians and politicians, well, a politician is the one that's funding this one and helped craft the language for 65. I don't want to misspeak on it, but I know he's had some personal experiences, I think, with his parents. And I would imagine most Mississippians have. My mother has breast cancer right now. I held my uncle's hand when he gave his last breath as he passed away from a brain tumor. Like, I don't think there's necessarily a monopoly on grief on that one. And so I think that's a lot of what the 65 proponents, or the group called Mississippians for Compassionate Care, push. And I think there is absolutely a legitimate claim to that. But from a realtor's perspective, and I would say from the average Mississippian's perspective, you've got to look at all the terms of this agreement that we're about to enter into when we walk into that voting booth. Because it goes beyond just making sure we help people who are in pain. We're amending the Constitution, and that is a serious action.
If anybody has any questions, if y'all want to go ahead and pop them in the chat box, or if you would like to talk, you are more than welcome. Just unmute yourself. My last question, I think my last question. Clarke, am I right that there are other groups across Mississippi like ours who are opposing it and pushing for A?
Yes, the list, y'all, continues to grow each day. I would encourage you to look. It's circulating on Facebook. I know I'll leave people out, but the American Medical Association, State Medical, Farm Bureau, Municipal League, Nurse Practitioners, Board of Nursing, State Board of Health, the Governor Reeves, former Governor Phil Bryant, Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson, the Department of Health. I have not, I think the one group I've seen that is for 65 is maybe the Epilepsy Foundation, but there are several other groups. Almost every medical group I've seen has stated publicly their opposition. The Mississippi Hospital Association, it's a strong coalition. And I think, and then there's also the faith-based side of it too. The Southern Baptists come out against it, Pentecostals have come out against it, American Family Association. It's a broad coalition. We just happen to be the ones that have I would say, the most organized advocacy effort, and that's why we're the ones putting out mailers and information.
Good. Well, and from a real estate perspective also, I know if anybody's ever traveled to California or any of these other ones, when they first started doing this, I feel like the real estate world and all the rules were at least a year or two behind on how you have to amend contracts, what you have to do, if a house is, I don't know, helping growing it, or if it's exposed to it or whatever else. So I would hate for it to be rushed and the deadline be less than a year away of when it has to be implemented. If you're going to do it right instead of just rush to do it.
And I will say this, this is taking off the realtor cap and just reading the language of 65 and 65A. A term that's thrown around with both of them, which I think it's very important that everybody on this call understand, is the term prescribe, or a physician's prescription. There is no prescription for marijuana. Regardless of whether or not 65 or 65A or neither of them pass, it is still a Schedule I drug, meaning according to the DEA and the FDA, it has highly addictive components and it has no medical value. So for that reason, tests aren't run on it and it cannot be prescribed. It's in the same category with methamphetamine, peyote, things like that. I'm not arguing that position. I'm just saying that's a federal decision that is unrelated to 65. And so the notion that, a physician prescribes it. No, under 65, how it works is an individual, you go to see your doctor, your MD or your DO, and they certify that you have one of the, I think it's 22 conditions, or that last phrase in there says something like any other, it says any other medical condition of the same kind or class of those herein enumerated for which a physician believes the benefits of using medical marijuana would reasonably outweigh the risks. And so what your doctor does is they just certify to the Department of Health that you have one of those conditions. You get a card, you can go to the dispensary, you can get, I think it's 2.5 ounces every 14 days, 5 ounces every 28 days. So it's not a prescription, and under any instance, neither one of those is prescribed.
Clarke, we had a question in the chat. Is there a deadline for A if it is approved?
Yeah, and that was what I mentioned earlier. So no, there is not an actual deadline, but that person may have joined late. But under Initiative 60, Alternative Initiative 65A, it says there is established in the state of Mississippi to allow the use of medical marijuana, and the program shall be structured to include. So what that means is when we put in our Constitution, there shall be a program established. Once that passes, any Mississippi citizen has the right to file suit if they think that the legislature is dragging their feet or that's not enacted quick enough. I think part of the reason that there is not a specific start date in there is they're trying to identify the best regulatory agency. They're trying to figure out the best regulations. They also want to hear from the groups that are involved. In fact, the author of 65A, when he called me on Friday, he said, would you oppose us if we filed this program in January? And I said, well, I have to run that through our committee process and everything. But I would imagine if y'all address the two concerns that we have, specifically the zoning or the inability for cities and counties to make those decisions or opt out, I wouldn't see a conflict with the realtor standing advocacy position. So in order, I'd say, to address that, I think the legislature certainly understands the pressure or the public sentiment that has changed on this issue. And to the folks that say, oh, well, there have been bills introduced that address, medical marijuana program, or what, there've been 20 bills introduced. I would say that's fair. It's also fair to say that there were more than twice that introduced to change our state flag. And I was at the legislature and I witnessed that sentiment and then respond to the public opinion in a matter of 4 days. So I after talking with the authors 65A and members of the legislature, I think that they're ready to move if they're allowed to.
Wonderful. So what do you need from us, from the realtors, from members? What's the best way that we can help clarify to people our position? Why it is the position?
So I would encourage y'all to visit our own website here. I'm going to go over here. If you look on our website, we have that slider there. This is a toolkit y'all can use. We have our press release on it. We have this guide to oppose 65, which is what you just saw. We have the actual language of 65, and we've highlighted the portions which address our concerns. And then this one here, I would encourage y'all, this should be very helpful. This addresses exactly in the language, and it has bullet points of why the Mississippi Realtors have a concern on it. So, at the end of the day, we need people to oppose 65. It's not a matter of voting for 65A or not. They're welcome to do so. At the end of the day, we just need our members to go out there and educate the rest of the population, because y'all have such a great stand in your communities and you're well respected about educating the people. And that's what I tell folks all the time when I'm asked about this, is if you look under our logo, the words we see are property professionals, community champions. And in this instance, Initiative 65 threatens those two principles in our association. So I would encourage everybody on here to read the language that's going in there. You'll see there are a lot of issues that you may find outside of the realtor realm. And so I would encourage everybody on here to read the actual language, that constitutional language that's going in there. Visit our website here, take a look at that sample ballot, and if you want to hand that out, that's what I've been doing when I speak to Rotary groups and civic groups. That's kind of been the most helpful thing to them.
Clarke, we've got another question. What was their purpose of making it so difficult to understand?
Well, that's a good question. So my response to that is, the reason it looks like that is because it's in our Constitution. And so in order to change how these ballot initiatives would go on our Constitution, we have to change it. And so it's actually done that way. It's been that way for a long time, and it is extremely difficult to do it. It's not, don't take it to think, the Secretary of State was getting clever with how they formulated the ballot. No, this is constitutionally how it needs to look when there is a competing ballot measure. And this is not the first time this has happened. I know at least one other time. I'm sure there are others, but definitely at least one other one in my lifetime.
It kind of reminds me of the 45, or what was it, 42A about the school and the judge controlling all the money. And and I mean, if they want to pass their agenda, they kind of only reveal the information that they want you to know and pull at your heartstrings and whatever. There's another question. Is there a reason why we are pushing to oppose 65, but not discussing why 65A is a better option? Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell y'all, because in that instance, when people ask about the differences in it, that's a whole nother conversation, because in pushing 65A, the realtors don't have an actual position on marijuana. And so if we were actively doing, in an effort to promote 65A, that wasn't the message, or that wasn't the motion that came forward from the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. It was specifically to oppose 65. And the best way to do that was in 65A, and filling out the ballot the way you see it on your screen now. In terms of educating the people on the difference of it, I think there was a choice that had to be made. We can educate people why 65 is bad, or spend the effort trying to promote 65A. And I think at the end of the day, the greatest concerns that exist for the Mississippi Association of Realtors are in the contents of 65, not 65A. And so I think it's really a campaign decision too, of the best way to reach voters
and explain, the concerns that exist within this language.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Clarke? Okay. Is there anything else, Clarke, you would like to share?
I think this is. I hope this has been helpful to some of our members on the call today. I'm also available if y'all want to either call me or email me separately if you have a question on it. I've had some of our members that have asked, hey, it's been a very positive response. There have been, of course, a few. Why are we involved in this? And the couple that I have received on that, and we respond to them. They understand it. Some people. We have some people on all ends of the spectrum. You've got some of our members that say, I want to fully legalize it for every purpose, recreational, whatever. Then you got some people that say, under no circumstances do I want marijuana in the state of Mississippi. Our concern, I would just point everybody back to those 2 points of what exists as a concern to us as the association. If you go back and read there, I'm sure you'll find other elements that are that you may have an interest in, whether it's your ability to possess a firearm, whether it's the legality in terms of liability. There's a lot to look at and digest in all of this, and I appreciate all the members on here taking the time to listen, become informed, and engaged, because that's the best way we move Mississippi forward.
Wonderful. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, like I said, y'all, we did record this, and so we will have it up on our YouTube channel tomorrow. So please be sure to share it with any of your fellow members and realtors who maybe could not attend today. But with that, I put Clarke's email address in the chat box if you would like to reach out to him for any other questions. If not, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you, Clarke.